Hello, happy holidays. This is Founder Laverin with Fantasy Grounds Academy. I am going to do a show today about creating encounters. We're going to use the basic DnD5e SRD. No fancy schmancy stuff, no extra special content, nothing like that. I'm just going to use what is provided to you for free. If you get a standard or a basic license, you will be able to do this as well. If you have the ultimate license, you'll be able to do more, obviously. But I'm going to get you guys kind of up to speed on just creating a little bit of content for yourselves and to give you some inspiration potentially on some of the things you might want to look at or keep care of while you're trying to build content. So this is going to help you with the organization a little bit and just kind of give you some ideas. So if you have any questions, go ahead and ask in the chat. I'll look there from time to time to see what you guys are doing. So in the beginning here, I have the latest edition of Fantasy Grounds. So it's version 4.1.12. It is December 28th, 2021, soon to be 2022. And I am starting a fresh campaign. So I've clicked on Create Campaign. I selected the Dungeons & Dragons 5e Ruleset. I gave it a name for the DnD5e SRD. I put in no password, put in my chat name, and I'm have it on LAN, so it's private. And then I'm just going to hit start, and it's going to load up with nothing but a fresh slate. The only extension that I've put on here or add-on was the font extension. Everything else is pretty much standard or basic. So I didn't add any fancy things on here or make it anything that would be something you'd have to go out and buy necessarily. So I wanted to make sure that you guys have just a rough idea of how Fantasy Grounds can work for you. Hey, Bella, thanks. So while I'm waiting, I wanted to say Happy New Year. Hope you're enjoying your holidays. Don't forget that the winter sale is going, and there's also the Humble Bundle and other community members have sales going on the DMs Guild. So if you're interested in getting content, you got the extra money or gift certificates or gift cards, I'd go for it because it's a good time to get in on it. I actually got the Pathfinder Humble Bundle with Pathfinder 2. Even though it doesn't give you the Fantasy Grounds content, it still gives you the discount. So if you buy a bunch of PDFs on the store for Paizo, and you link that up with Fantasy Grounds, you're going to get quite a discount. On top of that, if you do it before the end of the year, you're going to get the partnership discount and the winter sale. And if you go for the bundle, I was going over this earlier, and it gave me quite a discount. So you're basically taking almost 50% off. So that's a really good deal. So I actually bought a Humble Bundle package, and I got one of the Abomination modules for like less than $6 because of the discounts and the partnership. So that was the Fantasy Grounds version. So I was able to pay like $6 or less. It was like $5 something for a module. That's crazy. Usually between $15, $20 for those Adventure Path modules. So I ended up saving about almost 70%. That's a pretty good deal. I don't own the whole entire bundle, so I don't get the bundle pricing. So I imagine if I had that too, it probably would have been a little less. But anyways, so I have a fresh copy of Fantasy Grounds. This is pretty much the standard screen you'll get, except for the fact that I have this Fantasy Grounds Academy logo here. If I go to the library and go to modules, it does have some basic things loaded here. I'm going to go to the activation area for modules, and I don't need to have a lot of this stuff loaded as it is. So if I deselect some of these things, it will remove them from the library, so it's more vanilla. So I don't have to have this stuff on here. And really, you're going to get the SRD for free. So that's just going to be something that you'll notice when you first start. You won't have anything loaded. So that's what you'll get is a fresh start. You can load the SRD and the basic rules if you want. this Fantasy Grounds Battle Maps comes with Fantasy Grounds, so that's something you'll get as well. So that's all I have loaded. I have the SRD, the basic rules, and I have the add-on Fantasy Grounds Battle Maps, which actually comes with the base program. So I don't have any really add-on content or DLC loaded. Just kind of letting you know that up front, so you know that it is possible to create content without owning every single book. So one of the things that I think some GMs want to do eventually after they run a few adventures is they want to create their own content. And one of the things I'm going to go over is creating some encounters. So creating encounters in Fantasy Grounds, once everything's put in, it is very simple, very easy. The only thing you might struggle with is the encounter balance. There are tools out there that allow for that, such as the Kobold Fight Club. So the Kobold Fight Club gives you kind of a way to balance and to set up for encounters. There are other tools out there as well that will help you with calculating experience points, coming up with the challenge ratings, coming up with a good idea of what strength of an encounter you want to put against your players. As I use for a rule of thumb, for it's basically, low-level creatures, I would say you can probably get away with one creature per character, usually does the trick, depending on what the creatures can do. If they have spell casting abilities and resistances and such, that's when things start getting a little bit difficult. If it's just a bunch of melee or missile attacks, those are arrows and such, those aren't too bad or too hard to balance. So you might have one spell that actually changes the entire dynamic of the encounter. So you got to remember that when you have NPCs that have special abilities and such. So you might only want to include one, and if they do have any minions, maybe just a couple, because it could easily get overpowered once you start adding in quantities of monsters. So I'm going to do something like that today. So I'm going to add some sort of group here, maybe a group of goblins or a group of orcs or something like that, to kind of give you an idea of what types of things that I'm going to be looking at. So I want to go ahead and open up the campaign folder on the right-hand side. And again, this is assuming that I have just the basic stuff open here. So with the SRD for 5th edition, you get the NPCs from the basic monsters. So you're getting 65% of all the monsters. You're just not going to get artwork or anything fancy like that. The SRD data is going to give you just enough material to create a character and kind of give you a rough idea, but it's not many options. You're not going to have all the fancy choices and such. So you might be able to create just a real basic character. With the SRD magic items, you're getting this from, there's equipment and there's some tables, some magic item templates. So you're getting some basics on equipment and items from that. And that would be like the DM's guide. So you're basically getting a really raw version of the 5th edition rule set, the real base of it. And then, of course, you have the basic rules, which is kind of a snapshot of the official rule books. And you're just going to get some examples, some things that you might be able to pull over and use. But generally, when people build content, they will use the SRD. So this means that you're going to build stuff that is more conducive to stuff you want to sell. So you can get around the intellectual property worry. So I don't mean get around it, but you could follow the OGL, the original game license, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and start building some content just with the SRD. So you don't need any content. And the reason I'm doing it this way is so that if you are new to Fantasy Grounds or you don't own a bunch of the content, this will give you some hope and some practice. So when you do get some content, it'll be a whiz for you. So if you take the SRD data, the bestiary, and the magic items, and then maybe use the battle maps to test your stuff out, that's basically all you would need to get started. This is a good idea to get used to how the user interface works without investing a lot of money. So if you just buy the standard license or a standard subscription, you can check this out before you go all in. So this is one way to do that, is just get the demo, download your either a subscription or just pay the $30 or $40. It's on sale, by the way, till the end of the year. You got till the 5th, I believe, and that's 25% off. So if you want to get in on that deal, that's a good deal. So this is basically going to cover just with the NPCs and the basic setting up encounters for yourself. So these would be something you'd want to create, outside or beyond a module. And if you are going to buy any modules or you want to start off with Fantasy Grounds, I recommend Lost Mine of Phandelver because it's self-contained. It pretty much has everything, including pre-gens. So you really don't even have to do a lot of this stuff that I'm showing you. So if you just want to play and check it out, that's a good starting module, and it kind of tells you how to run it too. So it's pretty well written in that regard. So I want to take and grab the NPCs area in Fantasy Grounds, which is on the right-hand side. And what this is a list alphabetically by letter, alphanumeric basically. And these are all the basic stuff. And I have the basic rules here, so there's a lot of duplicates. So what I'm going to do is filter the group to the SRD bestiary. That will filter out whatever other content I have. So that way I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so let me check something here. Moment. Okay, so what I'm doing is looking down this list to see what type of creatures that I want to make for this encounter. So what I think I'm going to do is create kind of a tough encounter so you kind of get an idea of the sort of things to watch out for. So I'm going to use a white dragon, which is a very powerful creature. I'm going to use some kobolds, which is going to be basically like the minions for the white dragon. And one of the things that I like about this is that you can theme this, and you can also set up a thing where you can detail the relationship between the two. So the kobolds, in a sense, follow and worship the adult white dragon as their leader or their mother. They all speak Draconic. These particular ones are probably nomadic and also live underground or inside of ice caves, so they probably don't live outside, but they probably live in like caves or such. So that kind of follows in with the dragon. The white dragon probably has a lair in the ice somewhere, so I think I could see that working out. So this is how I would do this if I was going to create an encounter for my party. Now I'm going to assume that the dragon's going to be overpowered for the party. So when you're creating an encounter like this, it doesn't always have to be deadly. Like there's this frightful presence. Once they make themselves known, the dragon, they can basically, it's basically like a turning spell. And anything within 120 feet of the dragon's choice, and they're aware of it, they have to make a saving throw or they become frightened. So this is a very powerful thing in itself. You can just do that during your encounter. You don't have to have the dragon attack them. You can just come out and scare everybody and then send in the minions. So that would be something that could really create a really fun encounter without killing everybody off. And then if it looks like the party is wading through the kobolds too quickly, you could very easily bring the dragon back and just have him do a flyby. So he can maybe fly by once or twice and blast them with his cold breath. I mean, that alone is deadly. Just one time would take care of it. So you don't even have to have him land and attack everybody and do all kinds of stuff. You can just do some basic things, or you can just come by and do his tail attack if he's not off the ground yet. Maybe some characters or players are trying to attack the dragon. So you could actually have them just kind of come up and get hit by the tails of the dragon, or the wing attack is when he actually starts, starts flapping his wings, and he will fly up half of its flying speed and just kind of create like a wind tunnel and knock everyone down. So, and they'll take damage because they'll actually get hit by ice and they'll be knocked prone and stuff. So it's kind of a cool way to make it more cinematic and less, exchange, like going back and forth. So I don't know if characters would last very long with a bite and all the different actions they can take. They can have 3 legendary actions. They can walk on the ice without any extra movement or losing traction. They have a lot of good saving throws. Their tough challenge rating is a 13. So I think the white dragon could be used more like your white elephant, like just kind of scare people more than actually fight, and then just use the kobolds as their actual enemies that they have to fight. The kobolds are only 1/8 challenge rating, so you can afford to put out a dozen of these. So what I would do with this is actually make 2 encounters. I'd have one with the white dragon, and then I would have another with the kobolds, and maybe make different waves of kobolds, so maybe like 3 waves total at the most. And then the rest of the kobolds would be too young, or they would flee. So that would be something that you'd probably take in consideration when you're setting up your environment and you're setting up your different challenges and such. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and create some encounters. But one thing I do want to mention is that you can edit these character sheets, or the NPCs in this case. So if I want to make copies of these, I can. So I'm going to make a new group. And I'm going to call this just SRD Encounters, I guess. So group 1 is the default name. What I'm going to do is edit it. So I clicked on the plus button to create the new group. I'm going to click on the edit groups and create a new group called SRD Encounters. And I'm just using this for organizational purposes. This is just a good habit to get into. You don't have to do this. You can leave it in uncategorized, but it gets harder to find your material that you worked on. So that's why I do it that way. So the next thing I'm going to do is make a copy of these 2 creature types in the group that I made. So in the SRD Encounters, I'm just going to drag in a copy. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Put that one back. So that goes back to the 5e bestiary. Yeah. Yep. So there's a copy of it in this 5e bestiary. And then there is going to be a copy of the white dragon too. So I'm going to copy that over. And at the bottom, I need to get rid of this filter. So we have the ancient white dragon copy. So if I drop the list down, I'm not selecting my new group. I just have it visible. I'm going to take the adult white dragon, drag and drop it into this encounters area, and that will be where that's going to go. And then for the kobold one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to look for kobold, make it kind of filter it out. And I want to make sure I'm in the bestiary. So when you come down here and you look for kobold, there's the copy right here. It's not attached to any book. And I'm going to copy that over into the actual group. So SRD Encounters now has its own unique NPCs. They are copies of the original. And at this point, I'll be able to edit them. So I don't have to worry about copywriting the original content. And you can't really edit those sheets anyways because they're locked. So that's why I did that first. So if you want to customize your NPCs, you have to unlock them first. So fortunately, this particular dragon doesn't have a lot of spell casting. It's pretty much just melee, missile, and natural attacks plus its breath weapon. So that's pretty simple. And it says adult white dragon copy. So if I unlock this, I can change the name of this dragon, or in this case, I'm getting rid of the actual copied title. I'm going to call him Cryonax. That's going to be his nickname. Cryonax is an adult, huge dragon. So that means he's going to take up like 6 squares in the combat on a map. So Cryonax is a white dragon, and in the non-ID name, I'm going to put white dragon or reptilian creature. I'll just put white dragon. So that way, when it goes on to the combat tracker, it won't say Cryonax, it'll actually say white dragon. So they won't know his name right off necessarily unless they talk to some of the local people or they capture the kobolds. So the kobolds, I'm going to call these ice kobolds or something like that, snowbolds. That's what they'll be, snowbolds. So in the non-ID name, I'm going to put pale, because they're kind of a pale color, I guess, so pale kobolds. But they're known as snowbolds, so that's going to be the title of them, or what they're known as in the region. So they have kind of their own nickname. So snowbolds is what these things are called. So that's pale kobolds is what's going to be on the combat tracker when you add it, and white dragon. But if once you know what they are or you've talked to someone, you'll get the actual name. You could do that by clicking on this ID button here on the top, and that actually makes it to where you can hide the title of the NPCs. So that way you're not revealing it right away. You can kind of give some little things like that. And Bella, I think Nady Tamis is a actual spammer, so don't just ignore Nady Tamis. So if anybody's seeing that, that is just probably just a spammer. Okay, so that's from YouTube anyway. So anyhow, the next thing is to start the encounter process. So a white dragon with kobolds is pretty powerful. So I want to treat them as 2 separate encounters because I don't want to necessarily combine them. And that's in case I want the choice of flexibility of whether or not I want to use the dragon. So I want to go ahead and put up a encounter area. So if I click on encounters, there are a couple ones in here left over. There's some baby bats, some cave goblins, water snake. So there's some basic stuff in here that I had created before. So I'm just going to delete those. And I'm going to drop down and create a new group. And again, I'm going to call this SRD Encounters. And this is going to differentiate between the actual rules and the stuff that I've created myself. So now that I have my own group, I'm going to set up a couple different types of encounters, different strengths, different ideas. So first of all, I'm going to create the kobold. So I have the kobold NPC open. I'm going to click add item, or you can right click and create an item if you want. So it does the same thing. So this is a blank encounter, and I can drag this shortcut on the top left corner where it says snowballed and drop it into the encounter area. So this is going to become a new encounter. Once you've done that, you can adjust the quantity. So if your average party size is about 4 to 5, what I might do is just change this to 4, leave that as the minimum, and then you can adjust this before you add it to the combat tracker. So once you have the amount set, you can hit the refresh, and it will give you the actual XP. So this would be worth 100. It's half CR challenge rating. There's 4 snowballs, and there's 100 XP total. And that comes off the stat block because they're each worth 25. And if you add up 1/8 a couple times, you're going to get half. So that's basically what you're looking at. So you do that times 4, you're going to get half challenge rating. And then you got the 25 XP, which will calculate to 100. So it comes off the stat block. So a lot of that's already figured out, unless you're making custom monsters and such. And then I'm going to just call this snowballed minions for the actual name of the encounter. So that's basically how I'm going to label it so that I know what it's for. I have an idea. So the snowballed minions is something that I might want to also include on the dragons sheet, because if I pull the dragon out and just use that as like a scaring tactic, it might be convenient for me to add the encounter for the kobolds in the back. So what I'm going to do is unlock the character sheet for the NPC stat block for the Cryonax for the white dragon, and click on the other tab. And what I'm going to do is drag and drop the snowball minions into this area. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to have something to draw upon when I'm actually playing and I don't want to dig through everything and try to find where they're at. So if you don't have them linked to a map or to anywhere in your encounter, this might be a way to do it conveniently. So if you pull up the dragon, it'll have the minions. So what I'm going to do is type in lore in case I want any story entries later. Maybe there's some story behind Cryonax. So that'll be a blank area that I'll just leave open. And then I'll have the minions here as another group or another section that I'm just going to create on here. And I'll drag the encounter on here. And what that's going to do is going to afford me to have the ability to easily call this up and summon them, basically. And then I'll add it to the combat tracker, and it will make things a lot easier. So to make this encounter fun, I might have a little lore set up on the sheet. So I want to put something real basic, just to give you an idea of what can be done. We'll say that Cryonax is the offspring of so-and-so, and then I'll just say Cryonax lives in a cold, mountainous, or a cold region, and then I'll just put that as some real basic lore. And then for a canned response or canned thing, maybe he says something in Draconic, like a warning, like, maybe he says, leave my lair or become a popsicle. And he says it in Draconic, so they may not even understand what it is that he's saying. But that's basically what the gist of it is. So I highlight this information, and I'm going to hit Control-3, which adds the dialog box. And if I hit Control-Tab, I can assign the speaker. So I can say White Dragon, I'll say White Dragon, because this assumes they don't know him yet. So it'll say the White Dragon is saying this. So now when he comes up out of the encounter, I will just click that. It will put it in the chat. And if I want to do it in Draconic, I can just select the Draconic language before I send it to the chat. And then when I click it again, it's going to send the text over in Draconic, so the players will know that that the dragon said something, but they won't necessarily know what he said unless they have Draconic on their character sheet. So that's kind of a cool role-playing thing that you can do. So that's just a thing. So if he comes up out of the ice, or he comes out of his cave, or he flies up from behind a mountain or something, you have some things prepared. And then if you want to sick some minions on him, you can sick a couple waves of these minions on him, and that will create that potential there. The other way you can do this, of course, in Fantasy Grounds only, is if you have a party sheet and you have 4 characters, which I do. I have these 4 in the combat tracker. So these are players that I've created before. That's the party sheet. And then I have the combat tracker, which is up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rest all these characters because I don't know what state I left them in. So I'm going to give them a long rest, and that kind of resets everything. And when you set up an encounter like this, when you pop up this minions from the back of this character sheet, you can just go ahead and click the down arrow, or in this case, this is a NPC stat block. You click the down arrow, and it will bring up the kobolds and put them on the combat tracker. So I want to go ahead and make the encounter with the actual dragon in it first. So I want to close this temporarily, move this encounter over, and then open up the encounters group again. And I'm going to open up a new one, or create a new one. Drag the actual dragon, drag on the dragon. And he has just an A for adult dragon. So if you don't want that sort of thing, if you have the tokens and the assets, you can look for a white dragon. So in this case, I'm going to go to the library, go to assets, and I do have a white dragon token that's really nice that was created by a friend. So I'm going to go to the tokens, and I have my own tokens that I've imported. So I'm going to go to the data area, because I made this available for all my campaigns. I'm going to click on dragons, which is where they're stored, I believe. And here are all the different dragons that I have. So I have some black ones and I have these white ones. So there's a big white dragon with effects, and then there's a wormling-like one. So I want the big one with effects. And then there's some other ones that I've collected as well. So I'm going to get this one that has the effects, which basically has like a blue, fiery type thing. So instead of changing the token on the actual NPC stat block, which I could do, once you unlock it, you can actually drag this up and change it there. But instead of changing the NPC forever, I'm only going to change it for this encounter. So I'm going to put White Dragon Assault or something like that as the title of this particular event here. And of course, I'm going to refresh it. That gives you your CR value, which you can see is very tough. And then I'm going to drag over the token from my data assets, provided that you have these, and drag and drop it onto the main token in the encounter. And that's going to change the encounter, not the NPC. So now Cryonax will show up as a token instead of this letter A. So you can leave the letter A on the NPC part, just so you don't have to worry about that. But if you have custom tokens and you're running your encounters in combat, you can actually take and drag and drop your own tokens or make your own pogs or whatever you want to do. So that is basically a way to kind of customize your encounter. So now we have Cryonax, and the White Dragon Assault was just the name of the encounter. And then we have the minions. So that's a good start for an encounter. And like I said, you don't have to use the full dragon encounter. You can actually let him, just let him scare everybody. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to set this up to be like that. So the encounters are set up. And now the trick here is, when do you bring them in, that sort of thing. So I'm going to base that off of a map that comes with Fantasy Ground. So I'm going to open up the campaign folder, which I'm already in there. Go to images. There's a bunch of maps on here that are already a part of Fantasy Grounds. But I'm going to go ahead and go to Fantasy Grounds Battle Maps. Now there's an Underdark tunnel, which might work. And there's a bunch of other tunnels in here. So I'm going to take a look. So this one doesn't have a grid painted on it, but it would work in a pinch if I needed a quick map and I don't have anything. And then there's an Underdark Tunnel Dry Chasms. So there we go. So there's a drier chasm. So that might be a thing. And then you have Water's Edge, you have Underwater. There's ones with intersections. There's some dark tunnels. So you have a little bit of variety here. I'm not saying these are the best maps, but they do give you a chance to explore. So this is a common map that's used to show a lot of product in Fantasy Grounds, so I'm going to use that map. Now you can imagine that this might be a snow-covered cave. So if you're not happy with the color and you want it more themed, you definitely can change this. So if I unlock this map, and if I go into the map tools, I can do all kinds of things. So this one actually already has line of sight on it, so I don't even have to mess with that. There's an entrance here, an exit here, an exit here. So there's a couple different points of egress. I think I'm going to have Cryonax located in this larger cavern since it's more roomy. So what I would do is pin the encounter first to this area so that it's easier for me to call this up. And the minions will come from these other tunnels. So I'll just put the minions, I'll link those as just a generic link so that I can get to them easier when I bring this map up. So if I close these, accidentally, I can bring this up, and then it will allow me to click on those and bring them up very quickly. So I don't have to worry about it. And players can't see these red pins, so you don't have to worry about that. The next thing I would do is place them, if I was going to put them in a specific area. So for the white dragon, I'm going to say it's a him or a male. So I'm going to place him in this area here. And if he's on the combat tracker, it'll scale properly. So if you drag it straight from here, you may not notice the actual grid. So if you want to see the actual grid and see how things are going, you turn on the grid by going to the grid area, click on this toggle visibility, and that's what you're going to get. So this way you can see the actual grid. So now when you have this dragon on here, you get an idea of where it's going to start. So I think that's a good starting location. So it's going to take up 6 squares. So that's going to take up that whole area. And then I'm going to rotate it by holding down the shift key. And then I'll have Cryonax facing more the direction where the PCs will come from. So I'm going to say that the characters will come from one of these side tunnels or maybe this other tunnel. Cryonax is kind of waiting for them. So that is basically where that's going to show, and then that's what it looks like because none of the players are on the combat tracker, nor do they have lighting. So that's something you got to keep in mind. The dragon might have dark vision, but players may not. So it just depends. And they need to be on the combat tracker. So if you're going to play Cryonax and you want her to be ready for the encounter for this particular dragon, you click the down arrow. Now you can see the threat level. It's actually changed the orientation. And this is where you'd want them positioned. So they are actually in these squares, not halfway. So when they move, you'll see this is kind of halfway on, halfway off. So you kind of want that threat zone or this area to be in centered with all these squares. So Cryonax is going to be here waiting in his lair. So he's ready to go. You can use the arrow keys to move it around once you have it placed. And that keeps it more straight and less likely to go off. Okay, so that's Cryonax. So the minions, I might decide to place them in other areas. So once the dragon says something or the players come into the area, the minions will come out. So I want to place them ahead of time. So one of them is going to be down here to the south. I'm going to place another one over here. And then the other two, I think I'll have one that's already in the tunnel or in this cavern. And then I might put another one to the south. So they're placed ahead of time. And then when I'm done with that, I'll hit the down arrow. And they'll be ready to go. So they're not visible yet to the player. So when the players are logged into the table, they'll only see their 4 characters. They won't see all this other stuff. So I'm looking at this through the Game Master view. When you're getting ready to run this encounter, you can individually reveal their names and their visibility by the little icons. There's a little eyeball and there's a little ID tag. Or you can click the main eyeball on the top left. That'll reveal all of them at once. You could do that and they'll be visible to the... So it all depends on what you're doing. When you want to see how these characters or these monsters would look, if you click on any one of their tokens, that's the range of the visibility of the kobold. So they must have a form of dark vision. So they're looking, this is when you're clicking on their tokens, you can see what they're looking at. And also this is the vision of the dragon. So just as you can tell, that's the vision type. So that's basically the encounter. There's another cool thing that you can do with Fantasy Grounds that will scale the encounter according to the number of players. So once you have a kind of a balanced idea of how you want things to roll, you can do one other encounter type, and this would be a random. So it's a subgroup in the encounters area. So I'm going to go ahead and make another group. This is going to, again, be, the SRD encounters. Once I've done that, I'll stop editing. I will select my new group and click on the plus button or right click and add an item or create item. There's a blank. So what I'm going to do is type a scaled encounter. How ironic. So this one's going to include both the kobolds and the dragon. I already know how I'm going to play the dragon, and if I'm concerned that if I'm running this for another group or if someone else is going to run the module, I might put notes on the other tab to direct the game master or the people using it to try not to initiate full-on combat with Cryonax, because the characters probably won't be able to handle that. So we'll call it scaled encounter because it's actually going to be scaled, and they are scaly creatures. And then from the encounters area, these will be stored in the sub area, but I'm going to go ahead and leave this open. And then I'd want to take that and bring up my NPCs. So here's Cryonax and the Snowbolts. So Cryonax is just going to have this regular setup here, and the Snowballs as well. So all this does is it gives you an example of what you might want to put in here. So for Cryonax, there's always going to be just him. So that'll always be 1. However, for the Snowballs, what I might do is something like, 1 plus the number of party members. So to do that, it's a $sign PC. So the $sign represents to tell Fantasy Grounds to look at the party sheet, not the combat tracker, but the party sheet. So these are who is on my party sheet. There's 4 of them. Normally, you don't take an account for minions or monsters that are on your side or companion animals. It's just the party sheet. And then for the syntax with the numbers, I'm going to type in 1 plus. So regardless of the size of the party, it's always going to scale to that. So you're always going to have 1 more kobold than you would PCs. And that's the idea. Or you can go 2 times the number of PCs. Or you can do division or subtraction. But what this does is it allows for you to customize the encounter without having to manually adjust it. So it's going to adjust it kind of based on just the number of PCs. It doesn't take into account levels or CR level or anything like that. You kind of have to have that worked out beforehand before you make one of these. But if you know the mix of the party, you might be able to adjust even better. But you're not going to necessarily know that if you're publishing content. So this is 1 plus the number of PCs in the party sheet. That's how this works. So when I generate this encounter, it technically should generate Cryonax and 5 kobolds. So we can test that. So I'm going to go to the menu for right now and just delete out what I already have. So I'm going to click the garbage can and then click delete all foes. And now I'm going to run off of this encounter. So I'll link this into the very center of the map. Nothing is going to be placed at this point, so I have to manually do that. So I'm going to hit generate. And there you go. There's 5 Snowbolts and Cryonax. So I'm going to do the same thing. Put Cryonax there. And then place the kobolds. So this time, I'm going to have 2 Snowbolts in the entrance area. And then 1 over here on the side, and then 2 to the south, and then, of course, Cryonax. So that's how that would work. And then you hit the down arrow when you're ready to run it. So if I close this, They'll disappear off this map. But if I bring up the scaled encounter and hit generate, it's going to generate the encounter. The one I made earlier is already set, but you can do this on the fly. So then you send them over to the combat tracker. They're still not on the map yet. And then you drag over the faction, in this case hostile. They're still not visible on the combat tracker. So now I'm just going to place them. I just move them. Takes less than a minute. If you already have the encounter set, it doesn't take very long. So there you go. Then when it's time to fight, they already have their initiative. So I'm going to go to menu, go to initiative, and click on the PC initiatives. And basically, Shayra would get to go first. So as soon as she comes out into view, that's what would happen. So I'll put the characters on the map now. So here's the party members. So Gallimar, he doesn't have any sort of line of sight or torch. Can't see anything. Shayra has dark vision. Doreg has dark vision. Nita doesn't have. So 2 humans, 2 non-humans. So that's the difference. So if Gallimar puts on a torch, I will take and put on the effects, which is a little running man. It might be a wand. Depends on your interface. He's going to have a torch in his hand. So I will drag the torch to his combat tracker in. And that will light it up for him. So now you can see. Yep. So now you can see what. See the lighting. So that's how you do a real basic encounter. Now I created these characters with content, so I imported them into this campaign, which you can do. But you just can't customize or build anything without any content. And that's where if you have the player's handbook, at least that's what would help you. You don't really need to buy everything else unless you want to. So just having the player's handbook, that alone would be huge, because that'll give you all the basic classes and you can build your own content. The SRD you can use, it just takes a little bit more work. So you can go in and build a character with the SRD. You're just not going to have all the options. So this is just a quick and dirty way to build an encounter. I wouldn't say it was quick because I actually sat down and explained it. Did a lot of customizing, but I wanted to show you the power of using Fantasy Grounds. And it's not that difficult to do once you have everything in place. It's just the time that you take to customize or to add your own tokens. Those are the things that add up. But if you're using an actual store-bought module that has all the tokens and the encounters and such, you don't have to even do all that. So it's really just a matter of time and how much effort you want to put into it. But this is basically how you would set up an encounter, get it ready to run, test it out, use it for fun and just kind of see what you want to do with it and then go from there. So I didn't have to have all of the books to do this. I just had some basic content, a few custom things like the token, the fancy white dragon token. These kobold tokens actually come with Fantasy Grounds. It does have some basic top-down tokens or pogs. So this comes with the Fantasy Grounds. These guys look like little deep. But basically, that's what you're getting with the SRD, minus the fancy dragon token that I had in the players. So that's what you get. So if you want to try Fantasy Grounds or at least get in on a game, or just get, like I said, get a month of the basic subscription, watch some videos, build your own encounters and such. The base rules are there. So the rolls and such work. So if I want to make an attack roll, I'll say that Gallimar is going to attack this kobold. So if that's the case, on Gallimar's turn, he's going to take his sword out. So on his character sheet, this one's already built from, from previous content. And he's going to take his long sword +1 and strike the goblin. So he already has the goblin targeted. So I don't even have to get close. So he can just double click on his crossbow and that will fire at this kobold. So that's a 12 plus his bonus. He got a 15. So that hits. So he hear this click and the crossbow bolt comes out and hits the kobold. And I'm going to double click for damage. It did a total of 7, but the kobold partially absorbed it. So it might have a resistance or something on it, but it basically absorbed part of that damage. So it probably took less. It took 3 points instead of 7. So that's just an example. So this is kind of a fun thing to do, just kind of on yourself. You can actually almost play this whole thing on your own without needing anyone else. But I do that to test the encounters out occasionally, just so I can see and make sure that it's going to be fun and not too ridiculous. So that's all I got for now. I think that's a good kind of a rough understanding of how encounters work. If you guys have any questions, you can leave it in the chat, or you can go to the archive video on YouTube and you can comment there. Again, this is just for fun and just to show you guys some of the things you can do in Fantasy Grounds. And I don't have a ton of content loaded. So I just have the SRD, the map that comes with Fantasy Grounds. Most of the tokens came with Fantasy Grounds other than the players. And I actually imported those characters. So you can import characters if you have them and put them in a basic raw campaign, which this has barely anything in it, and run the game. The base or the underlying structure of the rule set is there. The only thing that's really missing is the art, the ability to customize with existing content, and your imagination is missing if you're not getting how it works. So if you have the time and you can understand how Fantasy Grounds actually works, you can build your own content right from the base program. You just have to have the correct approach and have an idea of what you're going to do. So this is just a way to show that. So you guys have a good holiday, Happy New Year. Take advantage of the winter sale, or if you're into Pathfinder or one of the other rule sets, take advantage of that. That's a really good deal. And also, not to mention, next month, the Academy, Fantasy Grounds Academy, we're doing a full month of the Traveler rule set. We'll have other things going on as well, but we're going to have a more focused month on the actual Traveler rule set. So if you like sci-fi and such, that's what we have. So yep, take care everyone, be safe. We'll see you around.